Alright, I'm gonna start off by saying this is gonna be spoiler filled reviews, or this is gonna be a spoiler filled review. So if you don't like, spoiler filled reviews, check out a different review. And if you haven't seen the movie, definitely check out another review because, like I said, there's gonna be spoilers for the entire film, and I'm gonna be going over the other films as well, or at least X Men Origins Wolverine. So if you haven't, seen the movie, check out a different review that won't spoil it all for you, or just go see the movie, which I highly recommend. But the Wolverine, obviously starring Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, is the sixth X Men film, and it's the second that is solely based on Wolverine. And while everyone pretty much hated, X Men Origins Wolverine, I personally thought it was okay. Like I generally go into films, I never have a high expectation for movies because I try not to. I try not to have a high expectation because I don't want to be let down. And I didn't have that for Wolverine. I thought it's just going to be a nice comic book movie, and I thought it was. It was okay. It had good fight scenes in it. The story was a story I really knew already. Like I think most people who went to see X Men Origins already knew that story, but you just go to see it because it's a comic book movie and you like superhero movies. So I went to see it. Personally, I enjoyed the film. I thought it had a cool ending fight. Like the fight with Deadpool was okay. The fight, like Wolverine versus Sabretooth, was really what I enjoyed more. But the movie overall, I thought it was okay. And the ending for that movie, originally, if you saw like the leaked version, if you even remember, they had a scene after the credits in that movie where he was in Japan, but I think they took that out for the thing where like Deadpool was reforming or whatever. But anyway, they move on from there and they get to the Wolverine where Wolverine's off in Japan, or at least it starts off in America, but he of course goes off to Japan because he's going to meet someone that he saved a long time ago. And I really enjoyed how the film started off with him, during World War II, and he's in a bunker, and they show him he has the bone claws, which they look okay. I mean, personally, I think like most people, I prefer the adamantium claws to the bone claws, but I'll get to that for the end of the movie. But it starts off with him in the past, how he saves Yoshida, and then it jumps to him um, in a bed with Jean. And I remember before the movie came out, I read a review. It was like it wasn't a review, but it was something on Yahoo about how the dream sequences with her were unnecessary because she was like in a negligee, which I mean, I don't see why it's that big of a deal what she's wearing. And he was in bed, so it made sense. If he was just walking around, I don't know. I mean, that's generally how those scenes go. It was obviously like an inner monologue type of thing where his subconscious is kind of projecting, Gene, and so he has to kind of talk and figure out what does he really want after, you know, having to kill the person he loved, and in order to like save the entire world. So they have those scenes. I personally enjoyed them. I thought they make sense for the movie. I thought they did. They don't advance the story, of course, but it's not to advance the story. It's just to show, when he's talking with Gene, it's where you really get to see what's in his head because he's honest with her because she's not real, and even if she was, that's who he loves, so he'd be honest with her, and he doesn't really explain things to anybody else, so we get to see inside of Wolverine's head, what's going on, piece by piece in the film, after he fights somebody else pretty much. But like I enjoyed those scenes, and of course, after he does that, he actually wakes up and he's alone in the forest with the long hair and super beard, and so he like sees this. He walks through the forest. I don't know why he was cutting the trees. If anybody can, if you saw the movie, if you can explain that to me, I was really confused why he was marking the trees like that. But I don't know if it was for like how many days he was there or weeks or whatever. But for some reason, he was like marking the trees, and then they show like this super giant bear which comes into play later, of course. So he goes and he meets the hunters who end up killing the bear, and I kind of enjoyed that scene because when he talks with Jean for the first time, he mentions how he took a vow never to, hurt anyone again after he had to kill her because it hurt him so much. So he didn't want to be, the Wolverine anymore. And that bear, him being an animal, him and the bear kind of had sort of a connection. And those hunters, killed that bear, and he kind of had to kill, a fellow animal who's like his friend. And then he goes to the bar and he talks to the guy, and it's like, a poison arrow. And I thought that was really interesting, just how he had that little dynamic with the bear. Even though it was a super CG bear, it was so weird that it was so big. But it would be a little bit harder to have a real bear. But for what it was for the film, I enjoyed that little scene. Like he tried to cut himself off from all people, which he actually did, but he still couldn't escape the fact that he'd have to, kill someone or at least something that he did appreciate, which was that bear, because they just had like that simple little connection where they'd see each other and it's just like, hey, and that was it. And once he's in the bar and he's about to fight all the people, I wish I could remember her name, but I can't. But the redheaded girl, that's what I'm gonna have to call her. She comes in and uses the katana, which I thought was really cool. I always like scenes like that when I see them in movies. And she like cuts the chair and cuts the bottle and stuff like that. And then they just head off to Japan. And when he goes off to Japan to meet Yoshida, who he saved in World War II, he thinks it's just to say goodbye, and then he gets the whole story, which everyone pretty much knew from the trailer, that he wanted to basically give Wolverine the chance to be human. But what they didn't show, which I appreciate because I hate when trailers, like show too much of the movie. But what they didn't show is that Yoshida actually didn't want to just make Wolverine human. He wanted to take his powers for himself so that he could live forever and keep running his company. And I thought that was a pretty cool twist to what I thought the movie was going to be in the trailer. But Yoshida dies, and Viper, who I liked as a character, one of the things, or I guess the only thing they did, was I love how every time they showed her, and I don't know if you saw the movie and you didn't catch this, which I think would be impossible not to, but every time they showed her, she'd get like greener and greener until eventually at the end of the movie she was in like her actual comic book costume. Because like she started off in the nurse outfit, which was nothing, and then when she met with like the leader of the ninja clan, she had like the coat, but she had like a green dress underneath, and then she had like a full green dress, which was like way late. Like after that scene, if you think about it, she wasn't in the movie. At least from what I can remember, she wasn't in the movie from that scene to like the very end of the movie, which like that was pretty early on when you think about it. It was probably half an hour in, or a little bit more maybe, and she wasn't in for like another half hour of the film or 45 minutes or so, and she was in the full green dress. And then when they captured Wolverine, she was in like this shiny full green dress. And I just thought that was a cool little thing they did, which was obviously for fans, of the comic books who knew her, and they just like, I don't know if all of those costumes were her costumes. I know that the final one was though. So if you really know the comic books, like you can buy them all, or you have bought them all, and you read them, you can tell me like her different costumes and stuff throughout time, if they were all like that, or if they were just doing it just to finally get to her actual costume. But the little thing that they did with her, I really enjoyed that. And like her character as a whole, I thought was interesting. But she takes Wolverine's powers, or at least she suppresses them, because she even says it herself. She suppressed them. She didn't take them away. So if you saw the film, because something I thought, like I saw a review before I went to see the movie, and while I was watching that, I thought, okay, if his powers were gone, his claws, his arms, his hands would be bleeding like the entire film, which they aren't. So obviously his powers are still there, just obviously not completely because he gets shot up and things like that, and he actually has to get surgery. But I really enjoyed how he went through. He starts off as Wolverine, and once his powers are gone, like he doesn't even really have a fight until after his powers are gone. Like the first fight in the bar, all that really happens is he like stabs the guy through the hand, and the guy hits him in the face with the bottle. And before he starts, that's when the redheaded woman comes in. So his first actual fight, he's going through, he's beating up people, and then um, he gets hit, but he quickly recovers from that one. And then there's the scene that they show in the trailer where the guys are like beating him up with the bats, and that scene is like you really see like Wolverine isn't himself, which obviously as a movie viewer you already knew that because the scene with Viper. But we don't really get to see that Wolverine until I think it had to. Obviously I didn't time it while I was watching it, but it was probably like the last half hour of the movie. We get to see Wolverine as hardcore Wolverine who can just brush through any sort of pain. And I really enjoyed that about the movie. And that scene, which I'll get to, I really enjoyed before he actually came back to life. But his whole journey going through trying to figure out, do I want to give up my life or do I want to give up my power so that I can live a normal life, to, what he eventually decided in the end, which was I have to live with who I am, regardless of, losing the people I love. That whole journey he had, I really enjoyed it. And it was mostly just him fighting people, and it was pretty much I killed these people, but I got beat up a little bit, and then he has this little reflection. But we really got to see inside his head, and I really enjoyed that in the film. And the fights themselves I thought were great. It was classic Wolverine. I love hand to hand combat because I really like martial arts films. So when any movie, even like Man of Steel when that came out, I really enjoyed the fight scenes in that because they did more hand to hand combat than we normally see in a Superman movie, which is just like, or Superman anything really, which is like a few super punches and then someone has to fly because they knocked the other person up in the air. But like hand to hand stuff, which we always have to have with Wolverine because his claws can't just extend forever, so he has to get up close and personal with people, and I always enjoy that. Um, the scene where he fights Yoshida's son, I really enjoy because like I love ninjas and samurai, so I'm of course doing this review objectively because I can't just be like it had ninjas and samurai plus it had Wolverine, so it's perfect. But generally I can be a bit biased towards anything that has either ninjas or samurai, and this has both plus Wolverine. But objectively, I did really enjoy the scenes. Like I knew, like well, you could see it in the trailer where they were gonna fight each other. That scene I really enjoyed, and before that, just before Wolverine, got his abilities back, and like I said, I can't remember her name. So the redheaded girl, who I wish I could remember, when she's fighting Ishida's son, that was a really intense scene because obviously these films do take um, certain creative licenses, with the Marvel characters. So you never know who will or will not die. And it seemed like he was a lot better than her, but she held her own. And the scene itself was really cool. I like that it was in sort of a it was completely held into the one room where Wolverine was because he was trying to kill Wolverine and she was trying to protect him. So she's like doing all these cool little flips and stuff. Like I remember she did a flip to dodge the katana and she flipped like towards the wall and then did a backflip like right after that because he swung back. And I thought like wow, that's really cool. And one of the scenes that they have in one of the trailers where she blocks him and he like hits the katana and flips it up and she catches it. I thought that was some like great choreography for a samurai fight. And it's like she's flipping around and he's doing more of a classic samurai style. And then right before she's about to be killed, Wolverine steps in. He's back. He has his powers, and so they're fighting. You know, katana versus claws. And I thought it was a really great scene, and I really enjoyed how it ended actually because he, Wolverine, they were fighting and Wolverine of course won, and he was like, he was gonna let him go, and he was like, you tried to kill your own daughter, you live with that, and you know, he was so mad at Wolverine that he lost. He came up at him again, and Wolverine caught him, and he was like, what are you? And of course he says like the Wolverine, and he stabbed him through the neck and killed him. I thought it was a really cool way to do it because it was like, Wolverine, obviously being Wolverine, he's generally pretty mad at the bad guys, but he stopped because he knew that mental torture is a lot worse than just dying. But once he tried to stab him in the back, he just killed him off anyway. And I just enjoyed that scene. The story, as far as Mariko and Yoshida and his son, I really enjoyed that. It's not the same story that I've known. Like, if you watch the Marvel anime, the Wolverine story is also for Mariko, where she gets taken back to Japan and Logan, pretty much goes after her, and Logan like fights her father and stuff to, because he wants to be with her and she wants to be with him, but her father hates Wolverine and things like that. And so it's not the same story, but it's still really well done. Like, the family dynamics are still great, with Yoshida leaving everything to his granddaughter, and that leading to her father trying to kill her through all these different things. Like, he sets her up with this like random guy who doesn't even really care about her. Like, this scene where Wolverine goes into the hotel room and he's like with the two women, and he like throws them over the balcony. Like, that was a really good scene. Like, he said, like, he wanted an explanation. He was like, "You have 10 words," and he said like 9 words, and he just punched him in the face really hard, and like he just kept hitting him right in the nose, and then he threw him off, which was in one of the trailers, I believe. And he like lands in the pool, and the redheaded girl asked him like, "How'd you know there was a pool?" And he's like, "I didn't." That's just a funny, cool scene, because it's Wolverine, and he does stuff like that. He will just kill people, but it's like a PG-13 movie, or it should, yeah, PG-13 movie. So he isn't gonna like throw someone over a balcony and they actually die. Unfortunately, it would be cool if we could get that Wolverine, but if you want that, you can just read the comics, or you can play the X-Men Origins Wolverine game. Like, even if you hated the movie, I guarantee you'll love the game, because it's like super bloody Wolverine. He's like just chopping heads off and all types of crazy stuff. But as far as the movies go, we get a lesser version of that, and we'll get little comedy scenes and stuff like that. But the family dynamics, I thought, were really well done, and the whole story, like I said, Yoshida basically tricking his entire family and everyone into thinking that he died, and eventually becoming Silver Samurai. I thought it was actually predictable, but I enjoyed it. And of course, we got to see Wolverine versus Silver Samurai, not in the way that a lot of comic book fans might want, but for the movie as a whole, I thought it was really well done. They at least showed Silver Samurai, because they could have done it where it was just a little reference and then that was it. But they at least had the Silver Samurai in there, and it was a mech instead of an actual mutant. But they still had the fight, and it was really well done. And Wolverine losing his claws, they included that, which I thought was really, like, we kind of needed that, because Silver Samurai is the person who can cut through Wolverine. So we do, they kind of had to show that in some way. And so, we're back to Bone Claw. So in the future films, unless for some insane reason they have him go through like another, like coat of adamantium, he's going to be in the Bone Claws, which I don't like as much, because, I mean, like most people, the adamantium claws are just iconic, and they just look cooler. I mean, if you saw the movie, or even if you didn't, you could probably imagine they look like bones with points on them. They're like circular. They aren't blades. They're bone claws, and they're not as cool. But for the story, it was very appreciated, and that's a. It seems like a tiny step to a lot of people, I'm sure, but if you're watching this, you probably know that's a pretty big step to take, to chop off Wolverine's claws and take them back to the bone claws. But overall, I love the movie. I know this is a super long review, so I'm trying to cut it short and get to the extra scene real quick. But overall, I enjoyed the film. I kind of want to see it twice, and that could just be for the action scenes again, and that's fine just to see it for the action. But I did enjoy the story for what it was, and I did like the train scene. That actually was, well, I can't say it was my favorite, because I really enjoyed the samurai fight. That was my favorite, but I think the train scene was the second. And then he didn't fight the ninjas like I thought he would, unfortunately. But that scene was still pretty cool. So that's the whole movie. I enjoyed it as a whole. I highly advise you to see it, or see it again, just to support it. But the extra scene which I knew was there. I had no idea it was gonna be as big as it was. Like I was so excited when I saw that, I started tearing up a little. I was like, I got super excited because like it started off, it was simple enough. They showed Trask. I was like, okay, that's cool for one because I know a little bit, based because of the '90s cartoons. I remember a lot of this stuff from all the for the Marvel characters. So I remember Trask, and Wolverine's going through the airport, which for anyone who is ever confused, he just gets the pat down. And so he's going through, and things start shaking, and so he knows it's Magneto, and he turns around, and then of course we really see the bone claws come out, and Wolverine stops him, or Magneto stops Wolverine. He's talking to him like, there's some things happening that are gonna defeat us. And if I remember right for Trask, which I could of course easily be wrong because that was in the '90s and I barely remember it. Trask originally was they were the people who were supposed to do like the cure for mutants, like they did in X3. But I think that what ended up happening was like they went from here's a cure to we don't need a cure, we're just gonna kill all mutants. I'm pretty sure that's how that ended up going. And I believe that's where we get the island of Genosha from, which is where all the mutants pretty much go. And they're already at the point where Magneto and Professor X are teamed up, so I'm really excited for that. Like we don't have to go through, the X-Men are doing this and doing that because we actually had that in X-Men 3 where Magneto and Professor X were already on separate sides, and now they see, Trask being the new threat is even more powerful than, we pick a side for the cure, for cure or no cure, which obviously the cure didn't work anyway because Magneto got his powers back. Although they could play it as Magneto is older, so he's a lot more adept with his powers, which is why he didn't lose them completely. So you never know. But he has his powers back and he's talking. And as soon as the guy behind him stopped moving, I knew Professor X was coming back to life. Or he had already come back to life and they were actually going to do it. And like I really enjoyed that because of course if you didn't know that that was going to happen, then you didn't see the extra scene for X-Men 3 when he transferred to the other person's body. And I'm assuming his body just I don't know what it is, but he's still in the wheelchair, so maybe that guy was crippled too. I don't know how they're gonna explain that, but the point is, Professor X is back. Magneto has his powers back, and they're on the same side. So I'm just super excited. I don't know if they're gonna do that for Days of Future Past, which they probably will, because since it's the next film. But I'm really excited for that. Like that had me. It's like I love the movie, and then that showed up, and I thought it was just gonna be like Wolverine. I thought he might like meet with somebody else, but that was way bigger than what I was expecting. And for some reason, I want to say that made the movie for me, which is so weird to say because it really has nothing to do with the Wolverine. But like I just love that. It was like the best extra scene like ever in any of the Marvel movies. So I'm gonna cut it right there because I already see this is like 23 minutes long, which is insane. But if you stuck through all of this crap, thanks for watching and check out the Wolverine.